Moving on to big money matters. Forbes has released its latest rich list. Chris Bishop is in studio with me now for a look at the Africans who made the cut. It's not you and I as always, Chris,
No,
but we journalists, so hey.
We're used to it, yes. But this list has gone viral. I mean, we put it up online with CNBC Africa.com, and something like 25,000 people went into it in the first few hours. There's a lot of interest in this. 29 Africans on the list.
Is that a new record?
Well, it is actually, especially in the main list. And it's interesting, there's been a few new entries. In particular, Mohamed Dewji from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, the man who wanted to be the next Tiger Woods.
And president, potentially, of Tanzania. I understand he's involved in politics there too.
He is, yes. He's an MP, but he's got the family business there, which deals in commodities and also manufacturing. And what he did, he took the family, basically, when the story goes that he was working on Wall Street, and his father said to him, if you can't afford to buy your own new suits, I'm sorry, you've got to come home and work with me in Dar es Salaam. But he's taken the family business forward, and he's doing all kinds of things. Like, for instance, he's launched Mo Cola, trying to take on Coca-Cola, which has been the graveyard of many an entrepreneur, including Richard Branson with his Virgin Cola. But he's gone from 900 million last year to 1.3 billion. And then one of his neighbours as well, a guy called Rostam Azizi, he's also from Dar es Salaam. He's in the telecoms man. He's got 1 billion. But the name at the top stays the same, Aliko Dangote. But the story is that he's lost 10 billion in value since last year. And in fact, I was working it out this morning. He's lost 6 billion since Christmas when we ran the list, the end of year 50 richest Africans. He's obviously invested in oil and stocks. His stocks have fallen heavily. He's invested in commodities, and a lot of the Nigerians actually have been hammered on this list. If you look down, I mean, Mike Adenuga is known as a very savvy investor in Lagos. He's into telecoms and oil, and he's dropped from 5.6 billion at Christmas to 4 billion now.
I wanted to touch on some of the investments that some of these billionaires obviously have. A lot of it is entrenched in oil, as you mentioned, but the strong Egyptian representation that we see there, where are they making their money from?
Well, it depends. I mean, a lot of in commodities, a lot of in manufacturing, a lot of them in telecoms, which is one of the great money makers, or has been over the last few years. Some of them are diversified. They managed to split their investments, so you don't get that incredible exposure. So something like when the oil price drops, then you start losing money. So it's quite widely spread, but yeah, and there's also, it's interesting, all the people coming down, one of the people who's gone up the most this time is somebody who lives not too far from where we're sitting now, Christo Visa. And now, as you remember, the fruit, he took in one of the biggest corporate deals that this country's ever seen. It was something like $6 billion, and he's an independent non-executive director of a company called Steinhoff, which took over Pepcore, his footwear and clothing company, and that's increased his wealth from 5.4 billion at Christmas to 6.3 billion now. He's now sitting in 4th place behind Nicky Oppenheimer, who's dropped from 6.8 billion at Christmas to 6.7 now. So it seems to be a fairly sort of fluid situation, people going up and down the list. It's quite an interesting one. That's probably why it's gone viral.
Exactly. Just on the calculations here, I know you've always walked us through it, but maybe a reminder as to how you actually calculate the value of these individuals.
Well, that's another point, actually. I was talking to one of our colleagues this morning who's up in Lagos, and he was saying to me that he thinks the people who are getting the best valuation are those who are opening up their books. They were saying, come and check my wealth, look through what I've got, here's what I own, here's what I fly, here's what I drive, and putting it together. And that's the way it works. I mean, people who want to be on this list have to open up their wealth and their books to us first here in Africa, and then there's a whole unit that works in the States which verifies and combs through with a fine tooth comb through people's valuations, also takes into account their debt. So you come up with this thing called net worth, which I would say, still most people, I think it's a conservative estimate. I mean, Aliko Dangote himself said to me once, he said, oh, you guys have got me down 20-odd billion, but I own a lot more than that. There's stuff that you guys have never even looked at.
It would be interesting to find out what that is, if he can't feel a 6 billion shift in his net worth.
Well, yes, exactly. But this is the case in point. I mean, a lot of people are still quite wary of coming forward and saying what they're, what they are worth. But if you look at it, 20 years ago, there was no such thing as the Forbes 50 richest Africans, and now look at it. The people are lining up, etc. And this continent's starting to find out a little bit more about what the people are worth, and also how important business is and entrepreneurs are to this continent, and I actually think it's a great thing, and I would actually appeal to all entrepreneurs out there to come forward, be honest, come out, tell us now, what are you worth?
Be honest and tell us what
Yes,
they're worth.
why
It's
not?
interesting looking at the international list as well, because Bill Gates is still sitting up top there.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see the relationship between these international billionaires and African billionaires. I think the Motsepe Foundation, Patrice Motsepe and Bill Gates are actually quite close.
Yes, well, Aliko Dangote too. I mean, and they say anybody who's doing business here knows Dangote. But also, they're in Washington all the time, they're in New York all the time, all these business types. But that's the great thing about it. Again, it's no longer this continent some sort of hazy place where people are not quite sure about. This continent is opening up a lot more. This continent is a lot more open for business than it ever was. And getting these names up there that people can identify, and people not only read this list here in the continent, they read it all around the world. People they can put names and faces to. I think it's good for business in the long term, and also from a point of view of your average, everyday African aspirant businessman, is someone to look up to, someone to aspire to, I think.
Exactly. Dangote, Oppenheimer, as well as the Ruperts, clearly big names to follow up on. Chris, thank you so much for your time today.